had new conversations and old conversations and met your colleagues from across the state. We're going to start this afternoon. I'm going to deviate a little bit. It's not on the agenda, but we're so fortunate to have an educational leader with us today. Senator Don Schaible is a senator from District 31, right? District 31. He lives and farms in Mott, North Dakota, and former school board member for Mott, and so has lots and lots of experience in your seats as well. But Don is an educational leader. He is an education champion. There are very few people in this world, in this state, that know the education funding formula, and Senator Schaible is one of those people. And he knows it backwards, forwards, and he sees the advantages, and he sees where there's still some things that could be improved, and he's constantly thinking about it. Senator Schaible has chaired the Senate Education Committee since 2017. What is that? 4 sessions ago. Yep. So he is a leader not only in the education funding formula, but he chairs the policy committee of education as well. So knows policy and knows finances. He is our great champion. He's a commissioner on the Education Commission of the States, and so is always connected, stays connected nationally with what's going on, best practices for schools. And so there were some funding questions, some questions about what might be on the horizon for the 2023 session. And Senator Schaible, I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I wasn't on the agenda or that, but I did spend 20 years at the school board, so that is my passion. I spent a lot of time doing that. Is that a button?
There we go.
And so that was kind of the rationale for this, is because, when I was on the school board, I thought we'd go and change some things and do what we got to do to promote education and make education better in our district. That was a long time ago, but at some time, whatever we wanted to try to do or things that we tried to change, there was always something blocking us to doing that, whether it was state or federal rules. Well, a lot has changed since then, and now that's kind of reversed. We made a lot of changes that made it available for school districts to run their own ship and go down the path they wanted to do. But what's really changed is now it's putting burdens on school boards and local districts, and that is a big shift. I get ideas and questions of how do we substantially change education in our district, and we brainstormed great ideas, and we've even tried some, and it's become clear to me unless the stakeholders of that district are totally involved, and that means not only the parents, students, teachers, administrators, but also the community. They're not involved with this change. You're probably spinning your wheels because the best ideas will probably go nowhere. And that's one of the things that I really want to stress, is that we hear all these issues that come up, and I get complaints all the time that well, our school is doing this, our school board's doing this. They want us to run the school board and change a law to fix something that they should do at home, and we don't do that. And that's kind of what we want to do. We want politics to stay local, best place it should be. So, but that's my suggestion for you, is that doing this, if you want to substantially change education in your district, plan to have everybody involved. That's your naysayers, the people that don't like what you're doing. I mean, that's your community, that's your parents and your staff. I mean, it was really devastating this last primary election, and mostly the school board election, what would you have, 15% of the people voted? And in school boards was probably a lot less. And I see in our local districts, I serve 9 school districts in my legislative district, but some of the elections we have, school board members were getting elected by 6, 8 votes. I mean, and that's really scary. I mean, God bless them that they're there, and we need great people doing this job because it's tough. And that's something that we really got to be fortunate to do, that people do this. But, as a school board member, and now it's up to you guys to know your job description, know your superintendent's job description, to understand your role, their role, and what's required of you. So, I mean, it's just, it's one of the best things that I've ever done, is being on a school board. It's one of the things I admire most about people that are willing to step up and do that, because right now, being a school board member is a very, very tough job. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort, and then we get thrown problems like teacher shortages, COVID, and all this other stuff that are just new, not even just talking about education and taxes. So that's kind of the thing that you do. So I would really like to thank you for your service. I hope you stay on long enough to understand, learn, and be effective to where it does, because it does take quite a while before you get involved in what's going to happen. And there's so many things that are changing. I mean, there's a lot of things I could talk about. I don't want to take a bunch of time. So I guess I'll just go into some questions if you have some questions. Well, if you look on the state website, my contact information's there, and I get contacted all the time. One bad thing about this is I probably know every superintendent in the state, which is really kind of good, but it's also, so I do talk to school board members, teachers, and everybody else all the time. So were there some questions? Yes, ma'am.
With this being a legislative year, are you projecting any changes in the funding formula or the amounts being?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to get into funding, which we can a little bit, but we're right now, state funding is by the student. It's a per pupil payment, so it's by the student. Right now, the state currently pays 72% of that cost out of the $10,236 that you get per student, basically. The state's paying 72% of that. Locals paying the other 28%, probably with your property tax. So that's the combination. So, but one thing that's always confusing is that the per pupil payment is a combination of local revenue, which is property tax, and the state contribution, which is, general fund money, which comes from like that. So now it's a per pupil payment. One thing that, we started in 12-13 is property tax relief, when we changed the funding formula and we forced schools to at least have a 60 mil contribution as their state share, or their contribution to the state funding formula. Well, and then there was also some things in there that you're limited to a 12% increase by new money, and then then also you had to be above 60. So there were some things in there that messed up some things. So that's kind of the problem with our funding formula. That's getting pretty deep. I won't go into that too much. We fixed some of those things, but the problem with what we've changed in this is that our funding formula is a student-based formula, so if you're getting more students and not declining, you're probably doing okay. But if you're stagnant enrollment or your enrollment's going down, you really get hurt by this formula. And that's just kind of the way it is, and I don't know of a better way to do that. One of the changes I see coming forward is I am going to propose a bill, which I'm working on quite a bit now, is to probably cut half your property tax by a quarter. Because basically right now, school property tax is about half of your tax bill, your property tax bill. I'm going to probably cut that in a quarter if this bill would pass, and what it does, it would take that 16 mil requirement down to 30, so the state would pick up a bigger share. That would probably mean the state would pay about 85% of the cost of education, and local would be 15%. One other thing that will do is, if this would pass, is when we seen the last time we did this in 13, is that we got pretty good property tax relief, which is probably over a couple $2 billion, which is still there. I mean, that's still every year, but the state doesn't get credit for it. Nobody knows about it. Your property bill tax is probably higher than what it was then. So what are we trying to do? So what this bill would also do, it would force school districts that they can no longer talk mills. They would have to talk dollars. And the reason for that is because mills are such a issue across states, where one mill will be worth $17 in this district, and it might be worth $60,000 in this district. So it's not an equivalent. So we're just trying to get away from that. And then schools also, or any political subdivision, is using valuation increases to raise the revenue. I was on the school board. I understand the revenue of that, but I think job as a school board and a tax entity is that we should explain the ask from our people, whether it's property tax or anything else, and we should also justify our spending. So that's what this bill would do, is that you would have to talk dollars. Any new dollars you would get, you would have to ask for it and get it, and it would just add a lot of clarity. So it would do three things. It would limit this idea of mills. It would provide some clarity on spending, which I think is crucial to a political subdivision, and it would provide about 25% of your property tax. That's one big change. But with all that said, that's $360 million over 2 years. That provides no additional money to schools. So, I mean, because right now, it's just, that's that contribution of local and state money, but we're just taking, the state would be taking on a bigger share of that cost. That provides no additional money for school districts, so the only way that school districts would receive money is they can always go to the vote of their people and ask for more money from property tax. That's not very popular. The other way is in the per pupil funding formula, where we give increases to that amount. That would be the biggest revenue generator for school districts. And like I said, if you've got population that's growing or good numbers, that's a benefit. But if you're a district that's declining enrollment or losing population, that's not going to be much help for you, because you could lose a lot. I mean, small school loses 10 kids, that's $100,000. That's a big loss.
And what about the schools that have federal land and can't raise funds?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, so that's why we're going away from that scenario so much. It still would be the per pupil payment, which would be your biggest revenue choice. The thing is that what scares me a little bit about this, and we're going down that road anyway, is that it makes the state more responsible, more than a one session bill. So look at, how do you make a 5-year plan when you don't know what your funding formula is going to be 5 years from now? So it does put a little more pressure on the state to be a little more cognizant to future funding needs, because right now it's a 2-year deal. I can't put in a bill that's going to tell future legislation what to do or how we fund it. So you can suggest things, but you can't do it. So, but it just, it's more of the same, but with a lot better clarity and a lot more financial prudence, I believe. Other questions? Yes?
What are you guys talking about in terms of North Dakota teacher shortage? Are there some plans coming to the legislature for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, what is it that you do? Where do you find these people? I mean, you grow your own, you try to steal them from other states, you try to do things, we've tried a lot of different, different scenarios. It's very difficult. There is things that we are going to try and do that. I mean, of course, what we would propose the next session would not take effect until August of probably 22. So it's not going to have much effect on this next school year, but probably the one after that. We would try to do some things. I mean, what we're doing and continue to do is pathways, get more people involved in teaching. We've lightened up the loads of alternative certificates, and I think Kirsten addressed that a little bit. We're changing the rules a little bit so that it's easier. You don't want to get too carried away on that, because you still want quality, and you need to make sure that we're getting the product that we want. So we're trying to do that. I mean, stipends, we've tried loan forgiveness and scholarships. It didn't go over very well because it made superintendents choose who got it, who didn't do it. That wasn't real popular, and you can't do it all. So, I'm not saying that we're not going to look at that again, but, even when you thought it was a really good idea, which we did, turned out to be not so, and that's kind of the dilemma that we have. So, there's all kinds of, the tile program of channeling into better, finding more people to do this, and then the other thing that we're dealing with is that we put so many demands and so many adverse conditions on our teachers who would want to be one. So maybe lightening up some of that load would probably be more so help than something else. So I don't know of any really great things. We are working at it, but right now, I can't say that there's a really good solution that's going to change that bubble instantly. So, yes?
Do you have any updates on the CTE grants that have been delayed at the federal level?
I don't.
What about plans if the federal level doesn't come through when the legislature meets, would they consider matching that on the top?
Well, that's the thing is, right now our budget is what, $2.1 billion for 2 years. And that's like I said, and we, in this last session when all this ESSER and COVID money was coming out, we were very cognizant about cost to continue and going forward. So, and Kirsten can contest this, how adamantly we were about that. I said, great, do what you got to do. You got to be cognizant of cost to continue, because between the, doing a 1% increase on your per pupil payment is about $30 million. 1% isn't a lot of money, but 30 million is. So if you're going to make a substantial increase, and how much more can you keep going up before it really starts to affect what you're going to do 2 years from now in the next session? So cost to continue is our biggest concern. So that's what we got to be careful about. the state's been very good to education, you know, and we want that to continue, but we're getting a little bit of pushback about results, and that's a concern for us also. You know, our reading scores, our math scores, you know, we expect better, and we're also looking at that too. We made substantial changes in reading. Thing is that'll probably take 5 years before we see results. You know, and I'd say math is probably the next thing, but, you know, to do that, you can't do both. So, I mean, cost to continue was probably no, I think, and my view as far as talking to my colleagues, I say the best thing we can do for schools and students is put it to the per pupil payment, because that helps every school and every student instead of a carve out for certain things. So that's my position on that. So if we're gonna see more money, that's where I would put it. Yes?
Thank you for being here, by the
No,
way.
no
This is
problem.
Really, really good use of our time. I want to ask one follow-up question about teacher shortage, recruitment, retention. I heard earlier, and I'm going to speak out of my ignorance, I'm brand new, so.
God bless you. You don't know what you're getting into.
I heard earlier some movement for military families. Somebody comes here, military, and they're getting rid of some bureaucracy, red tape. Is there something similar, or if not, could there be for people who come here to the higher ed university system, and then there's a spouse, a life partner who has a certificate in another state?
Yeah, no, and that's the pathway to teaching, and then a certificate of our requirements by our ESPD board. You know, we try to make that as easy as one without losing quality. You know, that's the other question. We have the reciprocity to other states. Ours is a little higher than other states, mostly because we demand quality. Do you lighten that up? Well, maybe you have to, and we have some alternative deals where, you know, local experts or provisional licenses to get people in the classroom, but give them the time to do that. You know, I don't know how far we go down that road before we really start questioning if that's the right move, but we will look at any possibilities that we can, because, I mean, somebody is probably a little better than nobody. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for what you're going to do.
Oh, thank you.